What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. And my guest today, returning for the fourth time, is Alex Zoltan. Now, you might remember him or know him from his position at True North News as a crime reporter. He also does work for Juno News. I really enjoy talking to Alex because he's not afraid to step outside of the preconceived beliefs that we're supposed to have in whatever political side of the spectrum we all profess to be on. Like myself, he considers himself politically homeless, and I always enjoy his takes on a wide range of issues, whether it be the Freedom Convoy or Trump Savior Syndrome. And that's a good segue into what we want to talk about today, because Venezuela is certainly heating up. You have the Trump administration closing the airspace. They've just decreed that they are allowed to do so. This follows, of course, the extrajudicial killings of people on allegedly fishing boats. Some people say they're fishing boats. Some people say they're trafficking, all the bad stuff that comes across the ocean. And a lot of people in the Make America Great Again camp seem to think that it's just okay to do so because Trump said so. They were warned. They closed that portion of international waters, and the United States all of a sudden has the authority to just blow people out of the water with not a shred of evidence. And Alex is really one of the only people that I see calling this out. So thank you, sir, for doing that. And so what's your take on the Venezuela situation currently?
On the newest developments, I mean, I think that it's still too in flux to really form an opinion. I mean, closing down the airspace doesn't necessarily mean that a war is going to happen. I certainly hope that it doesn't. Not because I think that Maduro is great. I think that Maduro is a terrible person. He's a socialist dictator.
Of course.
So that's not my position. I think that the U.S.'s history of regime change is pretty poor, generally speaking. So I'm not convinced that even if they were able to replace Maduro, that they would replace him with somebody that is better. But all of that aside, I think the extrajudicial killings thing, my theory on it from the beginning is that what they're doing is trying to manufacture consent for a war with Venezuela. And that does seem to be working. If you look at, the X comments, people seem to really love the fact that Trump administration is blowing people up.
Well, it has and it hasn't, because you do mention past dictators, and obviously, nobody likes the dictator of Venezuela. He's objectively an awful person. But I'd like to point out that so was Saddam Hussein, so was the leader of the Taliban, so were all of the subjects of these United States regime wars. But that's a separate issue entirely from whether or not it's beneficial for America to actually get involved in these things and do these things. And I would just like to point out that, a lot of people are supporting this on X, but a lot aren't. And that is what we didn't have in 2003. That was a very different scenario when you had, America was, they were very pro-war, and almost understandably so. After 9/11, you had that big unifying event, and there wasn't really much opposition to the war in mainstream American discourse. You certainly didn't have the ability of random people like yourself and I to just talk about it on the internet and give our takes. And while a lot of people are buying the Kool-Aid, there's also MAGA is divided right now, big time. And it's not just over the Venezuela thing, but it's also over the Israel-Gaza situation. And one thing I will say about the, just that the whole Make America Again, America First, whatever you want to call it, movement is this is the nice thing I'll say about them, because a lot of people on the left like to demonize them as they're in a cult. I've heard this take more than once in relation to the fact that they're so divided right now. Oh, the MAGA cult is in trouble. Well, that just goes to prove that it's not a cult to begin with if there's such discourse. What is going on right now is absolutely wild when you have figures like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Joe Rogan, Theo, all of these influencers that were responsible for getting Trump elected. I mean, he had such popularity. I mean, come on, man. He was against Kamala Harris. He was going to
Yeah.
win that regardless, but all of these influencers, all these people in the center, they really pushed him over the edge in a big way. I don't think he would have gotten the swing states without those people. And I think a lot of people are starting to see through this one. And I think a regime change war for the Trump administration right now would not be good with the midterms coming up. I think this is more unpopular in his base than a lot of people realize.
Well, the issue that I have, with my background as a crime reporter with a specific, like, I would say focus on drugs, is this runs downstream from the misinformation we heard about Canadian fentanyl pouring over the border into the United States. Anybody who has bothered to look at the data and will not accept the idea that the border is so unprotected that we can't know how much is going over, in which case, how would you know which direction it's going in? Right. I mean, this Venezuela thing, I mean, when they shot that first boat, I believe it had 11 people on board. And I think that is the subject of the Washington Post story about, kill them all from Pete Hegseth. The claim was made by Donald Trump himself. He said this boat clearly had fentanyl and cocaine on it. Well, if anybody who knows anything about fentanyl and the way that it's trafficked knows that 0% of the world's fentanyl is produced in Venezuela, like zero. They're not a fentanyl exporting country.
Not at all. I would dare say Canada exports way more than they do.
Yeah, Canada is a fentanyl exporting country. Most of it just doesn't go to the United States because it sells for less in the U.S. than it does in Canada. So why would you do it? But that's a whole other kettle of fish.
Yeah, and just this escalation this weekend, it just seems to be leading towards something that's not good. So Donald Trump puts this one out on Twitter, or Truth Social, I suppose. To all airlines, pilots, drug dealers, and human traffickers, consider the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed in its entirety. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. He has to put in, thank you for your attention to this matter. That's his trademark calling card, but he thinks he has the authority to just close the airspace.
Yeah, I mean, like, there are drug dealers that come from Venezuela. Just to backtrack a little bit on my last comment, a lot of cocaine comes through Colombia into Venezuela and then gets exported out. And like most dictatorships, Venezuela probably is involved in some level of narco trafficking. That doesn't surprise me, but they just don't make fentanyl. I mean, this is the problem with the Trump administration is that they always overplay their cards, right? Like, you could just as easily say, we are stopping cocaine for whatever reason. I don't know why that they would be focused on cocaine. And that's why we're going after fentanyl or after Venezuela. But they add this fentanyl component that just completely belies belief. It just it doesn't make sense.
Well, it's a boogeyman.
It is
because like and justifiably so. I'm not trying to downplay like the severity of fentanyl. It's horrible. You could describe it as a weapon of mass destruction.
It is. It absolutely is. So we were actually just talking before we started recording about how I've been covering this Gulf trial. So more people in Canada have died from the fentanyl crisis, I guess you could call it, and I would, than the Second World War. This is a war type situation, and it's really sad to me because a situation that is of this much importance should be treated respectfully. It should be treated with the importance that it has, right? Like, and what Trump is doing is he's weaponizing it, and he's engaging in what I think is pretty profound misinformation or maybe disinformation. I mean, is nobody in his administration just like, does nobody have the courage to tell him like this isn't true?
I don't think so. No, I haven't seen any indication of that. However,
I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene is left.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And just the
Rand
way that
Paul
he
has spoken out against this. So there is some dissent.
And the way that he went after Marjorie Taylor Greene was, quite frankly, disgusting. And was it Thomas Massey who...
yeah, I was going to mention Massey as well, yeah.
Yeah, like he goes after him for moving on after, like, his wife that he's known for his entire life, like his high school sweetheart, dies. And somehow he thinks it's, like, it's funny to just say, like, oh, you moved on so quick, you know what I mean? Like... Yeah.
Meanwhile, didn't he bury his ex-wife underneath like his golf course?
Yep. Yeah. I think there's a very famous picture of that. Just like an overgrown. It just looks like a a patch of dirt in the middle of the woods with weeds.
And I want to be clear. I don't hate Trump. I don't have Trump derangement syndrome or
Oh, of
anything.
course
Like,
not.
yeah,
No,
it's not about that. I actually find him he has some redeeming qualities. Very funny, very entertaining.
he's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, to anybody who's already hit the unsubscribe button, if you're still watching, I don't have Trump derangement syndrome at all. I was cheering for him the entire election, but understand that that's a default position because he
Yeah.
was up against Kamala Harris. That's all you can do in politics is root for who you perceive to be the lesser of two evils. And then some people decide that they might be above the entire uniparty system and just not participate at all. But in my opinion, you have to pick one or the other, and that's why I was rooting for Trump. Like when he got shot in the ear and he almost died, and when Hulk Hogan got up there and ripped off his shirt, buddy, I was all in. I was cheering for him 100%. But I was duped into believing that this time was going to be different. As George Bush famously said, fool me once, you're not going to get fooled again, right?
It was John Templeton. He was one of the founders of Franklin Templeton Investments. He came up with this saying, and I love it. He goes, "The biggest mistake you can make in finance or in life is thinking that this time it's going to be different." It's never different. History just repeats itself.
Well, I call me naive, but I really did think this time was going to be different. And that's why I'm very disappointed in this development, because I don't think a regime change war is what America First voted for. I think that's antithetical to the idea of America First. Obviously, I'm not some peacenik who's saying there's never a scenario where we need to go to war. Of course not. Sometimes it's justified, unfortunately. But this manufactured drug crisis, it just seems to be an excuse. And we were talking a little bit before the show, but I'm getting 2003 vibes. Because
well, the issue too is, even if you said this was all about cocaine, then why aren't we bombing boats off the coast of Colombia, Bolivia, and Peru? Why are we bombing Venezuelan boats? That doesn't make a ton of sense.
And also, who was the person from Honduras that Trump gave a pardon to, right?
Yeah, he just gave it. Yeah, I think didn't he import 400,000 pounds of cocaine or something?
Yeah, I think it was something absurd like that. And not only that, but one of the first things he did when he took office, it was very shortly after he was inaugurated. I think it was in the first 3 weeks. And this was a promise that he made on the campaign trail. This is how he got the libertarian vote. He pardoned Ross Ulbricht, right? And don't get me wrong, that's something I 100% support, because this kid, he wasn't a fierce narco terrorist. He was a kid. He was a college kid who opened the Silk Road, which is a fascinating story. There's a great documentary. There's several podcasts about it. Fascinating story. This guy definitely did not deserve to rot in jail for the rest of his life, and Trump pardoned him. But the fact remains that Ross Ulbricht was not directly trafficking drugs, but he was responsible for a platform that did. So this whole business about Trump being concerned about drugs doesn't follow. And again, I don't think America First voted for another Reagan who wanted to do bombing campaigns and anti-communist wars in South America.
The narrative has really changed too. So from first term Trump to second term Trump. So back in 2019, you can find clips where he talks about, he basically adopted the theory, which I don't fully agree with, that China is flooding North America with fentanyl almost as a revenge for the opium war. I think there may be some truth to that. I don't know if it's the dominant narrative. I think really what's happening is that, actually, I can tell you what's really, okay, so here's the story about fentanyl. Explained chronologically. This actually runs downstream from the Oxycontin epidemic. So what happened was Purdue and many other companies were pumping out opioids on, are you familiar with something called the fifth vital sign?
No, but explain what it is.
So typically in medicine, there are 4 main vital signs, heart pressure, blood pressure, your heart rate, your breathing, and something else. I can't remember what it is right now. But upon lobbying from the pharmaceutical industries, they introduced what they call the fifth vital sign, which is pain management. So if, God forbid, if you break your leg or your arm or whatever, you go to the hospital, they'll ask you after they hook you up to figure out your other 4 vital signs, they'll say, what is your pain level from 1 to 10? And then they will give you opioids, depending on what that pain level is. So a lot of these people who got addicted to opioids were actually prescribed them by doctors. And the most addictive one was famously Oxycontin. There's many documentaries and docuseries and all kinds of stuff that have been done about that story. Painkiller, I think, is one that I would recommend. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a good Netflix one. But basically, all these people got addicted to Oxycontin. They were pumping out tons and tons and tons of it, which they knew was being diverted. And they were doing it mostly in one very small area of Florida. So at one point, I believe the statistics was that 75% of the illicit Oxycontin in North America was coming from like a few city blocks in Florida. And it was going up to Ohio, it was going up to Canada. And what they found out was that these pharmaceutical companies had really downplayed the addictiveness of these drugs. In their studies, their peer-reviewed studies, they said that only 1 or 2% of people would get addicted. It turns out that it was as high as 20 to 40% of people would get addicted.
Are you suggesting that pharmaceutical companies lie to the public about their products and hide data?
I'm not going to name any companies specifically because I don't want to get sued. But yeah, that's absolutely what I'm suggesting. I think everybody knows that that's true.
I for one am shocked. I've never
Yes.
I've never heard anything like this before.
Sorry to make the world come crashing down around you right now. But yeah, so this is what happened. And then tons of people were overdosing on these drugs because they would become addicted and they were just doing too many of them. So they yanked the rug out from underneath a lot of these addicts and they said, well, you can't have Oxycontin anymore. And this is what caused a huge flood of people to go into the streets looking for street heroin. And so there was a massive amount of supply relative to demand. There was just too many people looking for heroin, not enough heroin to go around. And so fentanyl came in and filled the gap. So there's basically 3 waves to this story. The first wave being Oxycontin, the second one being street heroin, the third one being fentanyl. Returning to like the original point here is that in 2019, during first term Trump presidency, he acknowledged quite correctly that most of the fentanyl and almost all of the fentanyl precursors was coming from China. Why are we talking about Canada and Venezuela in 2025? Nothing has changed. That is still true. Most of the fentanyl and almost all of the fentanyl precursors come from China, and a very small amount come from India as well. What is the change?
Well, I think it comes down to resources. That's why I'm insistent that this is the pretext to a regime change war. And I would like to eat crow on this one. I hope I'm wrong. I really do, just for the sake of the innocent women and children that live in Venezuela, American soldiers who are likely going to die if this comes to pass. I hope I'm wrong about this because I said the same thing about, remember the 12-day war?
Mm.
Yeah, so I came out, I put a video out where I basically suggested that, Trump is very stupid for making this targeted strike on Iran at the behest of Israel, because let's be honest, we know who writes America's foreign policy. And at the time I said, this is a really stupid move. This is going to be a major escalation. And boy, was I wrong. And a lot of people had the same take as I did, and we all ate crow. It's just like, okay, a catastrophe averted this time. But how many times do we want to flirt with disaster?
Right.
Yeah. I just like I said, I'm a Canadian. If there's any Americans watching this right now, I didn't vote for Trump because I can't vote for Trump. I'm a Canadian, but I would have. So I can put myself in the shoes of somebody who maybe listened to him when he said, no new wars. We're not going to have any wars. We're going to bring our boys home. You know what I mean? And that's not what they voted for. But back to your question about why. Why all of a sudden this talk about Venezuela and Canada? Because we're being targeted with the same rhetoric. It's not going to get to the point where they're closing our airspace and bombing Nova Scotian fishing boats. I don't think it's going to come to that. We're in a very different scenario with the United States, but I think it all comes down to resources. Because let's not forget that Donald Trump on the campaign trail, I believe it was in 2023, openly bragged about wanting Venezuela's oil.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, do you think that maybe the change is that because if you look at the statistics, very sadly, despite him being the president who said the most about fentanyl, he oversaw the largest increase to fentanyl overdoses. Do you think that it came to him that he realized, well, there's nothing really I can do about this, so I should just weaponize the issue to do other things?
I think so. I think it's a little bit of that because well, again, this is why I'm getting 2003 vibes because in order to get away with this kind of stuff, you need a boogeyman.
Yeah, you have to
Obviously,
manufacture consent.
manufacture consent. Exactly. That's a great book by Noam Chomsky. He was the one who popularized that term, right?
Mm.
But yeah, no, that's exactly what they've done with the fishing boats. It's almost like testing the waters, you know, and you certainly do have a lot of people that were cheering it on and a lot of people that weren't.
I want to be clear. I actually don't think they're fishing boats. So I believe that they are most likely, like in the case of 11 people, I imagine that that was migrants. In the cases where there's one or two people and they're, these 5 engine cigarette boats, I imagine that they probably are transporting cocaine. They're transporting it from the coast of Venezuela to probably Trinidad, maybe to Dominican Republic, then to the United States. It's not really like a straight shot. And even if they did have drugs on board, let's just play this game. The appropriate punishment, not necessarily in terms of morality, but the appropriate punishment in terms of the law for drug trafficking is not capital punishment.
No, of
So
course
even
not. It's arrest them.
yeah,
It's do exactly what you said you were going to do in your election campaign and secure the border, right? You
exactly.
have the technology to spy on these things from the sky. You can pinpoint a tiny little cigarette boat in a vast ocean, so follow it. Wait till it gets to its destination and arrest the motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Pick up the drugs, and yeah, 100%, man. I'm with you on that.
And it's a
Um,
huge, if these are drug dealers, it's a huge lost opportunity because you just lost the ability to intelligence gather. I mean, one of the great thing about interdicting a drug boat is that you can say to the people, you can cut them a deal. You can say, I'll give you less time if you tell me who your boss is, and you can work your way up the ladder.
Yeah, they could literally send these people directly, take them alive, send them directly to Trump, who is the master of the art of the deal, right? Trump could
Yeah.
get it out of them.
So what is the point of this? It just seems it. Do you think that it's absolute power corrupts absolutely? Like Trump has just given Hegseth so much power that he's blind with it now?
Well, I don't know. That's a pretty broad question, but I would say that in general, I think that the neocons are back in.
Right.
I think that Donald Trump ran on a lot of great promises. It's not hard to see why he was elected in the landslide that he was. But I think that he has once again surrounded himself with the wrong people. I think that's who Hegseth always was.
Well, I
And I
think
think at a
Hegseth
certain
got the job because he was just a sycophant. He was just a big Trump supporter. Same thing with Kash Patel.
that's another disappointment, by the way.
Oh, my expectations were low enough. I'm not disappointed at all.
With Kash Patel,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I was pretty excited. I was pretty excited when he started talking about the Epstein stuff.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true, but he was never qualified to do that job.
No, but it's sort of amazing how like really though like the never Trumpers looking back on it certainly do have a foothold in his administration. Because JD Vance, that's another one. Like
Yeah.
he very famously like I think he went as far as to call Trump Hitler not that long ago, right?
Well, he's really changed too, and very much, I would say, if Kash Patel hasn't disappointed me, JD Vance certainly has. On the Venezuelan drug boats thing specifically, I believe it was Ben Crastertine or something. I don't know, some crazy lefty on X who had muted as soon as I looked at his timeline. But he had said that this is a war crime. And I agree with him on that. And JD Vance responded, I don't give a fuck what you call it.
Wow. No, I didn't see that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Especially since JD Vance JD Vance was a lot harder and more firm on the non-interventionism. He talked about that at length. Like I think it was on Theo Vaughn's podcast. Did JD Vance do Rogan? I think he might have
I think he
before the
did.
election.
Yeah.
Yeah, I specifically remember the build up to the election, watching several long form interviews where JD Vance went on at length about how, like, this administration is going to be done with foreign interventionism and adventurism and stuff like that.
Well, again, back to the China thing too, right? Trump quite rightly laid the blame at China's feet for this whole fentanyl problem. He just went to China and said he had an amazing meeting with President Xi. He said, I'm quite confident he will do something to deal with this fentanyl problem. And he lowered their punitive fentanyl tariffs on China while keeping them in place for Canada, I might add. This is not about fentanyl. I mean, even if it is about fentanyl, then that would mean we have the most incompetent U.S. administration of all time, because they clearly don't know anything about the issue. I mean, according to their own open source materials, their own data, I mean, seizure data, like, there's nothing to suggest that any of this policy when it comes to fentanyl is logical.
It's not logical. It all comes down to resources. It's just a way to justify the way they're, I don't want to say squeezing Canada, because like, I know you had a great debate, by the way, if anybody hasn't seen it. I would call it a debate, like the discussion on Clyde show. That was a really good conversation, because you guys had like totally opposing viewpoints, and I think if it was anybody but you guys, I think it would have devolved into a shouting match. But you guys just had a way of like discussing this topic like with a lot of civility. But like, I don't want to say Trump's punitive tariffs on Canada, because Clyde brought up some good points on there about how, like, we haven't exactly been hospitable to the United States when it comes to trade either, right? So I could see his points there, but yes, all this blaming Canada for drugs pouring over the border, it's just a way to justify their tariffs to the American public. And again, it comes back to fear, because the American public in general is pretty ill-informed about Canada, right? Like, they don't look into the issues north of the border. So when you say, like, they have the same drug problem we do. Like, if you go to Portland, it's the same as Vancouver. You know what I mean? They have the same problems. This is everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So it's easy to tell people that this is why you have tent cities. This is why you have junkies twitching in the street.
Yeah, I mean, I think the widely held theory is that the fentanyl claim about Canada was used to justify the IEEPA tariffs. I don't think he needs to justify it to the American public. He said that the Americans are ill-informed on Canada. I would go one step further and say that they're completely oblivious to Canada altogether. I was in Vegas a couple of months ago for a weekend. I hadn't been to the U.S. since Trump had taken office. Last time I was there was in Seattle during the election itself. So I was curious. I went around asking people in Vegas, hey, what do you think about what's going on in Canada? And the most common response I got was, what is a Canada? They couldn't care less.
Yeah, actually, Ryan Garrettson had a post earlier on X. I think it was earlier today. He posted, like, he might be in the States or something, but he basically made the point that we're led to believe that, like, this trade war is so bitter between us. But if you go to the States, they don't care. They don't have the same attitude towards Canadians that, like, are not everybody, obviously, but, like, your elbows up crowd. Like, it's the vitriol against Americans is really, like, it's unjustified. It's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, the funny thing as well about this whole trade war, if you even want to call it that, because most of the trade that occurs between Canada and the United States is covered by CUSMA. What is it, 95 to 97% of goods is tariff-free anyway?
Yep.
Pretty good deal as it is. Where was I going with this? Yeah, oh yeah, they need us way more than we need them, because they need our energy, right? Like, ultimately. Of course, we also need their refineries, because we don't have any of our own refining capacity, which is a whole other problem.
Well, this is exactly where Pierre Poilievre shit the bed, because he was so close to making this point and hammering it. Because you remember when the election he started heating up, when Carney got in there and the polls started switching, Pierre Poilievre, his rhetoric was like, we need to work with the Americans. You know what I mean? And he was starting to, I don't want to say, like, oh, we need somebody to stand up to Trump, but, like, he was using some, like, pretty, like almost tough language, just being like, he said exactly, almost not word for word, but he was making the point that you just made, that like ripping us off, you know what I mean? Like, do you know how much discounted oil we get
Yeah.
from you? And then he went on a spiel about like, unfortunately, because of the liberals, we need you to refine it for us. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
he was very close to making this point and hammering it in so the Canadian public might just get it through their thick heads. Unfortunately, Carney got in there, the polls started to switch, and I think the Conservative Party really just panicked. So they're just like, we just need to out elbows up Mark Carney. And it didn't work out for them. Not at all.
Well, I think like a lot of people are, I think one of the reasons that the conservative movement, if you want to call it that, is so fractured in Canada right now is because people are trying to make sense out of this election. Best way to make sense out of this election is to go outside, touch grass, and talk to people who are outside of your political circle. If you talk to anybody who is center of left, I talked to lots of people in Montreal, Vancouver, very, very progressive places. Everybody said their biggest issue is we don't want to elect another Donald Trump. And the brilliance of the Carney campaign was that they didn't run against Polyev, they ran against Trump.
Yeah, that's what they did. It's so obvious. And it's really funny, though, because like Polyev objectively is the furthest thing from Trump there is.
Polyev?
Polyev.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And he also, like, you know, I really think there was a lost opportunity there in terms of him capturing some of the disaffected NDP voters. Because on an optics level, he kind of fits all of their, like, he checks all of the boxes. He is adopted. His dad is gay. His wife is an immigrant. He has a disabled child. I mean, he's like kind of like perfectly fits the mold of your Obama Democrat. And I imagine that if you polled Canadians and you fit them somewhere on a political spectrum relative to the United States, they'd probably be mostly Obama Democrats. Like, we're a pretty centrist place. Most people are pretty progressive in this country, for better or worse.
Yeah, and all of his rhetoric too. Like, it sounded like something that a 1990s era NDP politician would say.
Yeah.
Like, if you just like, if you ran like one of Polyev's speeches through AI and just like got, like, you know what I mean, got Jack Layton to say it, maybe take out some of the stuff about like slowing down immigration. Take some of that stuff out, but when you talk about like the Canadian worker and stuff, I totally believe all of that stuff to come out of Jack Layton's mouth.
Absolutely, 100%. And unfortunately, we have this echo chamber of Canadian conservatives, mostly on X, who just lose their minds anytime Polyev criticized Trump. And they don't have their finger on the pulse of like what actual, respectfully, I mean, I love a lot of these people, but I don't think that they're going out and talking to their leftist neighbors nearly enough, because if they did, they would probably figure out, like in April, when this whole election campaign started, I think it was Nanos did a poll, and Trump's approval rating in Canada was 15%, which would make him the least popular politician maybe in the history of Canada. So if Polyev had ran against Trump, what would that have done? I don't know. I also understand that you can't alienate your base, right? So if, you know, the door knockers for Polyev are also Trumpers, you can't alienate those people. You do need them.
Yeah, he should have been, he definitely should have really capitalized. I know it was in like the final weeks of the election, but that tape of Donald Trump saying, I think his exact words were like, I think he was on Fox, like maybe it was Megyn Kelly.
You did a great video on this, the MAGA liberals.
Oh yeah, thanks, dude. Yeah, no, like to
great.
anybody that's watching, like I did sort of talk about this last week, but like it was Megyn Kelly that brought this up, and she basically said like the liberals are gonna win now, and he's just like, I don't care. The conservative guy doesn't like me, and he's like, quite frankly, very stupidly, he doesn't like me. Quite frankly, it's easier for us if a liberal wins. It's easier for us if a liberal wins. That should have been, the Conservative Party should have taken everything they had in their war chest, and they should have played that nonstop on whatever mainstream Canadian news they could get it on. That should have been a commercial break every hour on CTV.
I completely
and global.
agree.
You know what I mean? That would have turned everything around.
with the scary background voice where it's like, Donald Trump wants you to vote for Mark Carney. A vote for Mark Carney is a vote for Donald Trump.
And this is a good segue to, this is not related to Venezuela at all, but this is a good segue into, I meant to make a video about this last week. I just didn't have time. The JD Vance thing. When JD Vance came out with that tweet where he basically,
Oh, yeah.
he's 100% right about all of it, about our mass immigration problem and the fact that Canadians care more about Donald Trump than they do our own corrupt government, and all of our problems, all of our stagnating living conditions are because of us and who we vote for, right? Pretty harsh words towards Canada, but like, what do you make of JD Vance's headspace when he put that out there? Because like, again,
Yeah.
like it's completely the opposite of Donald Trump being like, I like Mark Carney, like we need these people. You know what I mean? It's like one hand isn't talking to the other. You know what I mean? Like, is that a little
Absolutely.
bit? Was that like genuine buyer's remorse? Are they
You know,
like, oh shit, they actually are attempting to diversify away from our markets? Like,
well, and we certainly are. That's the only thing that we can do, right? I mean, that's we can put that aside for now. As far as the JD Vance tweet goes, okay, on a surface level, I found it so funny because he goes, "Why are you people so obsessed with us?" And like, yeah, I agree that Canadians generally are really obsessed with the United States, and the United States, by contrast, doesn't care at all about Canada. That's true, but it's just hilarious, right? It reminds me of like when your ex texts you like, "Why are you obsessing over me?" You're like, "What the fuck? Like you texted me." I've lost your number. I haven't spoken to you in years.
new phone, who dis?
Like, it's not like he was retweeting somebody who was talking about the United States. Like, nobody messaged you, man. Like, nobody called you. What is going on here? Like, it seems like you're kind of. I actually kind of appreciate the fact that he's paying attention to Canada. I'm kind of flattered. Not many Americans do. In that sense, I think it's kind of endearing. But yeah, and I also like kind of also reject the notion that like I think that Canada's immigration system is completely out of control and that our infrastructure simply can't keep up with it. But I don't think it's a catch-all reason for all of our problems. And I don't believe that even if you put a complete moratorium on immigration, that the problems would magically fix themselves. But
No, not at all. It's such like it's such a tired analogy, but like it really is like a freight liner on the ocean. You know what I mean? Like you can turn this thing around on a dime as fast as you want, but it's gonna continue to drift and it's gonna continue to go in one direction before it actually turns around.
yeah, I mean, we just have an aging population too, right? Like this was years ago, but I was in the hospital in Halifax and I looked around and most of the patients were elderly, Caucasian, I guess you could say, like waspy Canadians, settlers. But like most of the staff at the hospital, I use that word jokingly, of course, but most of the hospital staff were Filipinos, they were Egyptian, they were Indian, Chinese, Vietnamese. It was really quite jarring seeing the disparity between the race of the patients and the race of the staff.
Well, yeah, like it's definitely something that's just our new reality in Canada, and it's happened so slowly over the last decade. I think a lot of Canadians are starting to like look around and just go, "Whoa!" Like, because this was taboo to talk about just 8 years ago. If you were like the only people in mainstream Canadian discourse, not even mainstream Canadian political discourse, just in general, like you had the PPC, and that was a far right position to be taken, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like any
Oh,
mention of immigration at all. And now,
I
like, I think the polls are like, this is National Post, but I think I remember seeing something like, 35 to 40% of Canadians are like very concerned about it.
I read somewhere that I think like more than 50 or 60% of people are in favor of mass deportations,
Yeah.
which is a crazy narrative, a crazy shift in public thinking. If you recall back in 2015, when it was Harper and Trudeau were debating one another, it was a race to see who could seem more welcoming to Syrian refugees. And when Trudeau famously said a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, he got like a standing ovation. which would never happen now.
No, it
You'd get
absolutely
booted out of the
wouldn't. Like
building.
Mark Carney is being forced to like on this issue, you know what I mean? At least they're signaling, they're giving the optics like they're attempting to do something about this situation. I don't buy it personally. I think they're going to like I think they're talking about bringing it down to like 2017 levels. But like even if you look at the chart, it's like that's still quite higher than we were in the early 2010s. And like I'm really not
Yeah,
trying to denigrate immigrants at all because like dude, like a
we-
lot of them are operating under the confines of our very lax system. You know what I mean? Like we don't have a legal immigration. Well, we do have a legal immigration, sure, but like all of our immigration is legal immigration. These people they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? Like I can't fault anybody from leaving their village in India to find a better life here. And as much as Canada sucks, like we've seen the decline, it's objectively better for these people. This
oh
place is
yeah,
heaven compared to where a lot of these immigrants come from. And like, I can't denigrate
that's what
them
people
for
tell me.
wanting a better life.
No, certainly not. I mean, I've never been to India. That's what people tell me, though, that it's a pretty horrible place. I'll probably never be allowed to go after all the things I've written about them. That's fine. Apparently, they're not a big fan of journalists who are critical of their government. So I imagine that visa will never come. Too bad. It was at the top of my list, as I'm sure you can imagine. But I mean, the thing about this issue with the immigration, so it is stunningly incompetent for the government to bring in all of these people without doing background checks from countries that have high degrees of criminality. This is again like my crime reporter hat going back on. All of these students, for instance, I don't believe there was any background checking at all. Many of these people were criminals, and we didn't think that there might be a good reason to build more prisons. Like, what if, like, this million people that we're bringing in, what if there's a high percentage of them are serial criminals? Where are we going to put them?
Well, I mean, there's the whole extortion situation that's playing
Yeah.
out right now. That's some scary shit, man. Like, there's videos of just. First of all, if put your crime reporter hat back on for a second, what is the point of like filming a crime? Because I've seen multiple videos of like it looks like a first person shooter. You know what I mean? They're pulling up to houses in Surrey and Richmond and they're just unloading on these houses with a Glock. Like it's crazy.
Well, the fascinating thing, so I'm actually doing a show with Melanie Bennett on December 2nd to talk about the extortion crisis. We're bringing in two really amazing journalists from Surrey to talk about this subject. And so these are good things for me to think about. In terms of why they're filming it, I imagine it's to intimidate the next extortion victim so that they know you're not fucking around. So when you say, give me $10,000 or I'll shoot your driveway, they know that you're being serious because you just shot the guy's driveway next to you. And there's a video to prove it.
It sounds like such a funny threat. Like, man, give me my money or your driveway gets it.
You know, it is kind of like cute. It's not the best word to use, that like they're just shooting cars in driveways as opposed to people. I mean, people have died very tragically, of course. But it's wild. I mean, it's something that we've never seen before. And I don't want to racialize this issue, but it is an issue that is predominantly affecting one segment of the population, which is South Asians. The best way to see this, statistically speaking, is there have been over 100 extortion cases in Surrey this year. There have been 0 in Vancouver. So if you know anything about the demographics of the Lower Mainland, you know, Surrey is mostly where people of the Indian diaspora live generally.
Yeah, and I know what's going on with like immigrants from India too, and it sort of parallels the situation with like Chinese nationals being harassed by police, like actual like Chinese spies on Canadian soil. It's all
Yeah.
very concerning.
Yeah, I mean, there was an extortion town hall hosted by the CBC in Surrey. It was just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, if my memory serves me correctly. And Maninder Singh, who is the president of the Canadian Sikh Gurdwara Society, I believe, he spoke about it. He was good friends with Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who is the famous Khalistani activist who was shot in June of 2023 on Father's Day. And he was saying, everybody from the CBC is saying that this is the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. Well, I don't know if you know who Lawrence Bishnoi is, but he's a criminal that is currently in jail in India, and they say that he is running all of this from jail. Well, as Maninder Singh quite smartly points out, how is it possible that he could be running all of this from jail and the Indian government doesn't know about it?
It seems highly unlikely.
That's crazy, man. That means that like we're under attack almost. If that is true. I think it is. I don't know, but I think it is.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure our government's going to look into it, because I know that when Carney was in South Africa, we made some sort of AI deal with the United Arab Emirates and India.
Okay. Yeah, we did. Yeah, Anita Anand famously or infamously took a picture shaking Modi's hand and looking quite pleased, which is also very strange. I mean, this is a complete 180-degree reversal from the Trudeau government on this issue with no real clear or coherent explanation as to why.
Again, I think it comes down to resources. I think
I agree.
They don't mind this stuff going on our soil if we could diversify our trade, because the United States doesn't share our values, right? We need to get away from them because the Trump administration is turning the United States into a very bad place. That seems to be the narrative in Canada, right? Like, we need to get away from the bad Americans because they don't share our values. So all of a sudden we're making critical mineral deals with India and the United Arab Emirates, because those are just beacons of left-wing Western progressive ideals, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is really. I mean, I feel almost Carney is stuck between a rock and a hard place. A little bit. I mean, this whole United States attacking its longest trading partner, well, its most reliable trading partner, and really one of the greatest partners ever in human history. I mean, the partnership between Canada and the United States has been, I would say, enormously successful over the last 3 centuries or so. He's really accelerating the growth of BRICS. And he's accelerating countries like Canada having to strengthen their relationships with countries that don't share our values, like China and India and Russia and others.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe I was hoping that maybe our leadership could be adults about it and we didn't go in the elbows up direction. It's a funny segue. It's not really related, but I'm looking forward to going out and buying a bottle of Jack Daniels tomorrow from our government-run liquor store, because our premier, Tim Houston, in his infinite wisdom, has decided that now's the time. Now is the time because the Nova Scotia government has been sitting on, because ever since the trade war kicked off, Nova Scotia was one of the provinces. EB did it too, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
I think Doug Ford famously poured it out, and
well, that was a Canadian company.
Yeah,
that was Crown Royal, right? But they pulled the American booze off the shelves. I think Nova Scotia. We can't be the only provinces, but I know Nova Scotia for sure. Nova Scotia, Ontario, British Columbia, we don't have American booze in our stores ever since the trade war kicked off. Doug Ford and our premier, Tim Houston, were just, no, we're not going to sell it. They have decreed my elbow position. My elbow position when I buy my booze is mandated by the government, so I'm not allowed to have Jack Daniels. But long story short, tomorrow I can, because the shit's about to expire. I think that's what it is. Now, the profits are going to feed Nova Scotia, which is like our largest food bank. So our premier simultaneously said that it's going for a good cause. So if you want to buy some American alcohol, it's going to feed Nova Scotia, because we have an incredible amount of food banks in this province. Incredible, he said. Yeah. I wonder why.
Nova Scotia, I don't want to pick on Nova Scotia or anything, but I was there. It doesn't seem like it doesn't feel like there's a lot of entrepreneurial ambition in Nova Scotia. Like, it seems like there's all of this arable farmland, but nobody's farming anything. Am I missing something?
No, you're not. But like, to the point, like, there are things going on here, but no, it's a pretty slow province economically. For sure.
That doesn't bother me. I mean, fine. It's like fine to lack ambition. That's perfectly okay. Of course, that's your right. But what bothers me is that then these people complain all the time about everything being so expensive. Well, yeah, you're on a peninsula where you could grow things and you're not. Of course, everything's going to be expensive. Like, of course.
We do have some. There's pumpkins, there's apples. We do strawberries. We actually do have a booming wine industry, though. Like
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
got quite a few impressive vineyards here. Um,
But,
Fishing, of
but
course.
why do you see so few cattle ranches in Nova Scotia? Is it too
That's a
cold?
that's a very good question. There isn't really a lot of like livestock and like traditional like actual agriculture that would boost our economy for sure. But man, we do actually have a lot of like smaller like mom and pop farms. Like I wish I could afford it. I wish I could frequent them more often, but we have a great one in Windsor I like to go to called
Hmm,
Olton Farms. So like
okay.
every time I'm driving through Windsor, I will always stop there and get some meat for the freezer. But I can't do it all the time because you got to go to the big box stores. Unfortunately, if you want to get price gouged less.
But
But
in the summer, it's like you see everybody is on their ATV or they're on their lawnmower. Like, why not just get a tractor? Like, you're already doing all the work. You're driving back and forth. I mean, you're 95% of the way there.
oh, a good buddy of mine actually does have a hobby farm. I
Hmm.
definitely admire it. Um, but yeah, no, not everybody does. There's not a lot going on here economically, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't want, I'm not picking on Nova Scotia or anything. It's just one of the odd things I
No,
observed.
man, go ahead.
Maybe when you have that much great seafood, you just don't need it. I mean, if I'm eating lobster every day, why am I bothering to milk cows and you know clean up pig pot, or whatever they call it?
Lobsters are for the tourists. A lot of us here don't even bother.
Really?
Yeah, it's too
Oh,
expensive, man.
it's so delicious though. I
Listen,
love
I beg to differ. I used to be a chef, and
right.
lobster is the rat of the sea, in my opinion. They
Yeah.
crawl around on the ocean floor and they eat all the shit and garbage. I'm not a big
So
fan. I
are
never
you a
got into
scallops guy?
scallops 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Digby scallops.
you got it.
Oh, they're pretty good too. I like prawns. Prawns are good too.
Prawns are
Salmon.
dope.
Salmon's great.
You guys have better salmon than we do.
Yeah, yeah. This is
West
salmon
Coast
country
salmon,
for sure.
100% way better.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. We're pretty blessed for our salmon here in BC. And seafood generally. I mean, we're right across the ocean too from a lot of countries that have lots of other really cool exotic seafoods. So,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I'm pretty sure any shrimp we get is arrives in Vancouver and is shipped across the country frozen.
I was in Calgary recently though. Calgary had a great food scene.
Yeah, I mean,
Calgary was fun. It was so quiet and so calm, like compared to Vancouver. I felt like I had like been transported to a different universe. I think I saw like three homeless people the entire 4 days I was there.
if Calgary secedes, are you going to move? Or no, sorry, if Alberta secedes, are you going to move there?
No, unlikely. I was born there. I was actually born in Alberta, but no, unlikely.
I spent some time in Alberta when I was younger. Me and my buddies, we moved out to Canmore, did snowboarding.
Yeah, I mean Alberta is nice, especially southern Alberta. I do like it. Actually, yeah, I love Albertans, but it's a very weird political situation going on there right now, and I don't know if I'm going to be somewhere landlocked. Like I'd rather be in the Okanagan. It's just way nicer. The weather is generally more reasonable, especially in the winter. The Okanagan's beautiful.
I've never been. The only places I've ever been in BC are I've been to the city of Vancouver and ferry ride out to Victoria and a bus to Tofino. That's it. That's it for me.
What did
Which
you
like
think of Vancouver Island?
beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah, loved it.
yeah.
Yeah. Very like I don't know. I was expecting it to be similar to Nova Scotia, but no. Well, like, 'cause you guys are like legit on a like part of it's like an actual rainforest, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's true.
No, I
Yes.
found it gorgeous. Like,
The Okanagan
obviously,
is really different. So like the Okanagan is a desert.
it's a
So
desert.
yeah.
No, it shows what I know. I pictured it more of like a farmland almost.
No, it's really weird. Like you get to the top of the mountain when you're going from Vancouver to, let's say, Penticton. Like you look down, you can actually see a break. It goes from rainforest to desert. You can see it like one side to the other. It's really cool. Yeah.
That is cool. Now, if I were to be somewhere landlocked, I'd probably go back to Manitoba because that's where I was born.
That's right. Yeah, you're a Manitoba boy. Are you from Winnipeg?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I've never been there. I've flown over it many times, but never been. I keep getting invited to go there. People are like, you should come check out like the crazy crystal meth scene and do a documentary about it. I'm like, oh, I just went to London, Ontario, and like, homeless people were already throwing drinks at me and were pretty rowdy. I'm not sure if I'm jumping at the bit to do that, but
Well, if you do go to Winnipeg and film a documentary about meth heads on the street, go in the winter. Get the full experience.
so how many people are sleeping on the street in the winter in Winnipeg? Do they have like places, shelters? Like what happens there?
They have shelters for sure.
Okay,
Like
good.
there's definitely people that slip through the cracks that like cuz shelters have rules and stuff, but no, there are 40-degree like minus 40-degree nights where like yeah, no, they'll go inside. They'll find
Do
somewhere
people
to
ever?
go.
This is a morbid question. Do people ever freeze to death?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it happens every winter there.
How often?
I don't know how often, to be honest, because I haven't lived there, like I said, in many years. But like I have family out there, and I do know it happens. But
There was a story out of Ohio recently. Well, not recently. It was a few years ago. It was a guy's birth. This is such a sad story. I don't know why. Like, kind of, I just have a gallows humor. I think I'm so desensitized now. But it was his birthday, and there was this big snowstorm. He walked to 7-Eleven to buy a lottery ticket, and it got so cold he froze to death standing up. And apparently, he had like the lottery ticket in his hand, and they
no,
found him. Yeah.
was it a winner?
No. Yeah.
Sorry, that's I had to add that morbid joke at the end there because like, could you imagine? Alanis
Yeah.
Morissette would have to do a rewrite of the
Yeah.
entire
Yeah.
song.
Ironic. Yeah. It's crazy. Like, it's amazing that people can even survive in that, because if you're naked, apparently, like, you can freeze to death well above the freezing temperature. The human body is not meant to be outside. I don't know how people live this long in these environments, like in ancient times.
Just by being wild animals, dude. Like it's actually pretty
Yeah.
incredible when you think about how well, number one, how the Aboriginals survived here, but
Yeah.
like just for the settlers, as you called them earlier, to just
Yeah. No.
arrive here on wooden ships and just like conquer the land basically. And like
Yeah.
literally,
I mean,
dude, it's people were different animals back then, and it was really just a few hundred years ago. Getting off a wooden boat, going hunting with a spear or well, a gun.
mhm.
Let's be honest, but like a musket, skinning an animal alive, wrapping yourself up in its fur, making a coat for the winter, and building a shelter out of fucking nothing.
I've
That's
I've been I've been really obsessing over kind of earlier colonial history, just because of this Cowichan tribe's decision in BC, which is a whole other issue. But I didn't realize how important pemmican was to the history of Canada. Do you know what pemmican is?
no.
So apparently there would be no Canada if it wasn't for pemmican. Basically, it's like an indigenous type of beef jerky. So what they would do is they would take meat, they would dry it, they would cure it, and they would mix it with berries. And this is what like Simon Fraser, a lot of these early explorers needed in order to get across the country. Otherwise, they would have been too busy hunting all the time. So they would take like hundreds and hundreds of pounds of pemmican with them on these canoe rides.
That makes a lot of sense because yeah, you have to wonder what these people did for food.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what they did. And they rarely used horseback, if ever. But yeah, like Alexander Mackenzie and all these guys, they lived off of pemmican. They fought wars over it. The Northwest Trading Company and the Hudson Bays, they would fight each other over pemmican. So they needed it to survive.
And very little has changed today because we're fighting wars over resources like oil. We need that shit to
Right.
survive.
Yeah, and if you go to a
Nothing has
gas
changed. We're still the same animals that we were back then. We just have fancier things.
100%. And if you go to a gas station, speaking of oil, to fill up your tank, what will you see? I mean, it's no different than an old trading post. What will you see at the cash register looking at you when you go to purchase your gas? Beef jerky.
Beef jerky.
Like, the more things change, the
The
more they
more they
stay
stay
the
the
same.
same.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the land decision in BC. I wanted to get your thoughts about that as well. Now that we've
Sure,
sort
yeah.
of segued onto the topic, so what's going on with that? Because I'm hearing a lot of conflicting information online.
Yeah.
So the prospect of people being unable to renew their mortgages.
Yeah. I was the one that broke that story that, yeah, broke the dam open on that one. So so there was a town hall organized by the mayor of Richmond, Malcolm Brody, where he invited affected homeowners and some members of the media to discuss the implications of this thing. And the guy who I interviewed in that clip that has now gone like viral or whatever, he came up. Individuals were, I think they were given 3 minutes to basically voice their concerns. And Brody, the mayor, he's quite a character. I really like him. He was like, "This is not going to be a debate." He goes, "You can ask questions. I'll give you answers. You can voice your concerns. I will listen, but I'm not going to debate you." So this guy comes up and he says, he goes, "If I don't own my land anymore, do I still have to pay property tax?"
That's a good question.
It's a really good
That's a very valid question.
Yeah, this guy was great. And, everybody, because it was just it was a banger. And Brody says, "Yeah, you do." And he goes, "Well, what if I don't pay it?" And I'm paraphrasing, of course. The mayor says, "Well, we'll take your land away." He's like, "But it doesn't sound like you own it either." The mayor's like, "I'm not getting into a debate with you about this, sir." He goes, "Oh, I'm not debating. I'm just curious, like, how this works exactly." And so this is all happening. His 3 minutes has elapsed now. And they're like, "Okay, sir, you have to go." They cut off his microphone. And I go into the hall, and there was probably, I would say, at least a dozen police officers there. And this lady who's running the venue says to one of the police officers, she goes, "I think it's time. I think we're going to have to pull one out." Like the police are going to have to go and grab this guy and pull him out. Luckily, that didn't happen. He was a pretty smart guy, and, he read the room. So he walked into the hall, and I said, "Sir, like, do you have a mortgage on your property?" And he says, "Yes, I do." And I said, "Have you spoken to your lender?" He says, "Yes, I have." So what did they say? He says, "They're not renewing it." My background, incidentally, was in finance. I used to underwrite mortgages every day. And so this doesn't surprise me at all, frankly. Mortgagers, banks, credit unions are already very reluctant to lend even on lease land, especially if the lease is less than 50 or even in some cases 100 years. This is lease land without a lease. So I did what any, I think, responsible journalist would do, and I did some fake business. I started calling some mortgage brokers and some banks, and I just said, "Hey, I'm thinking of buying this property," and I would find one in the Cowichan area, and all of them said no. They said, "We won't even consider it." I didn't even tell them who I am. They didn't pull a record check. It has nothing to do with me as a borrower. It's all about the subject property, because you can't lend on land where you can't take the land back. I mean, it's just, otherwise it's an unsecured loan, which nobody would qualify for at those prices. So yeah, there's these talking heads like Kyla Lee. She's on CBC now. She's that DUI lawyer. It's kind of a piece of work. She goes, "Oh, I don't believe this." Well, she could have done what I did. She could have just called a mortgage broker. I don't know why she doesn't.
Well, I think we both know the answer to that, Alex, is that these people don't do real journalism.
No, and she goes, "Well, I don't want to waste their time," is what I heard her say to one person. And it's like, well, I used to work in the business. They're not terribly busy at it's a real boom bust industry, frankly. Like, when interest rates are low, which they're not particularly low at the moment, you're losing your hair. You're pulling your hair out. You're trying to do so many mortgages, and then interest rates go up, and you're kind of sitting on your hands for a few months, just begging for somebody to phone you. So
That's absolutely crazy that she wouldn't be curious about a story like this enough to actually call some banks and see if this was actually going on.
Yeah, it is really strange. Terry Glavin is another one. He blocked me over this issue. I really respect Terry Glavin. I think that's a shame, but whatever. Um, he also thinks that this is a giant nothing burger. So, to answer your question of what is going on, I think that any journalist who's worth their salt would first of all tell you that this is a major issue for anybody who lives in that area or anybody who wants to purchase property in that area. But what
Or
is,
anybody who lives in this country, quite
yeah,
frankly, because if it can happen there, what's to stop it from happening anywhere? Because we just seem to be in a culture in this country right now. And yeah, I realize we're diving into some sensitive topics now, but like we're being told constantly. We're being reminded at every public event. Um, I went to a child's Christmas concert recently at a school, and there was no Christmas music, and we were reminded that we were on unceded territory at the start of it. So it's getting weird out there, dude. So like if it can happen there, like what's to stop whole suburbs all across the country from just being like you don't own your house anymore?
well, it's I think it's necessary here to discuss like kind of the history of BC. It's very unique. So if you look at a map of Canada in terms of what is considered unceded territory, most of Canada is ceded. There were treaties established many, many, many years ago, in some cases centuries ago. In BC, 95% of the land is unceded.
A
So
lot in Nova Scotia too. Like much
is
of
it
this,
really?
yeah, much
I
of the
didn't know
city of
that.
Halifax is they're making those acknowledgments that it's unceded.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in BC, it's so funny because there were three conservative MLAs there that I got the opportunity to interview at that town hall as well. And Steve Cooner is one of them. He's actually a Richmond MLA, strangely enough. And he is a lawyer and the critic for the Attorney General of BC. So I asked him, like, is this possible that this could happen in other places? And he goes, oh, it's not only possible. He basically says it's inevitable. He goes, 120% of BC is subject to similar land claims. And I said, excuse me? I said, like, pardon me, I'm a legal layman. Like, how could it be 120%? That's more than 100. And Teresa Watt, who's another conservative BC MLA, said because of all of the overlapping claims between different indigenous tribes.
Oh
And
wow.
that's what happened with the Cowichan case. So several tribes were defendants in that case, including the Musqueam, because they think it's their land too. No,
That's
okay, so dude, this is such a rabbit hole. This is such an interesting story. So what's funny about this Cowichan case as well is that that area of Richmond is like this mythical Atlantis land that everybody seems to want, but nobody can have. So first of all, one of the really funny things about it is that it's sitting on alluvial deposits on top of an earthquake fault. So if nothing else, like at some point, all of these properties are probably just going to get dunked into the sea anyway. Like I don't even know why insurance companies allow people to have mortgages in this area solely on account of that. But then even more interestingly, so this land was stolen basically every summer by the Cowichan who would come down to fish and capture slaves there from the Musqueam. Then the Europeans came, and under Moody, that was the guy who basically did like a big land grab there and gave it to his buddies. But then even later in 1942, I believe it was, a whole bunch of Japanese fishermen pretty much downstream from that area had their properties dispossessed when they were sent to internment camps. So there's something, it's like almost like this area is haunted. Like there's something really, there's just bad juju there. And I don't really know like why or how to explain it. But yeah, so now in terms of what is happening, so there's two really, I would say, leading indigenous lawyers on this issue. Their names are Thomas Isaac and Dwight Newman. I think that their consensus on this is that nobody frankly really knows. And this was said as well in the court decision. It's a sprawling 863-page decision from BC Supreme Court Justice Barbara Young. And even she says there is still much work to be done on this issue because she believes, doesn't exactly make it clear how, that Indigenous or Aboriginal title and fee simple title, which is basically private property ownership, can coexist. Now, how that doesn't really make sense because that would basically mean that the property is owned by two disparate interests. So if I'm the lender, for instance, and you stop making your mortgage payments and I need to repossess the property, how am I going to repossess it from both of you?
who are you going to repossess it from?
Exactly. And then even if I do repossess it, I don't fully own it. anyway, because the indigenous title, it's not like the indigenous title goes away when the person who owns the property gets repossessed, or the Aboriginal title, I should say.
The whole situation is comically absurd at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. You'd think that, okay, so there were a few arguments that they could have made. I mean, I have not read, I'll be honest, the entire 863 pages, but what's really cool about the decision, I will say this, I'll throw a dog a bone here. Barbara Young structured the decision in such a way that you can actually jump around. It's kind of almost like a Wikipedia thing. Like you can jump around from one argument to another. You don't have to read it sequentially, which is interesting. It's actually quite brilliant in its own way. It's brilliant and stupid at the same time. So one of the arguments that they could have made in defense against the Cowichan tribes was the issue of continuity and exclusivity. So basically what that means is, in order to obtain a designation of having Aboriginal title over an area, you must show that you had the land continuously and exclusively. I don't know how they lost on that argument, because the Musqueam lived there most of the year, and basically they would just retreat into the woods when the Cowichan would come every summer. So I don't know how the Cowichan won this, but it is what it is. It's the decision, and now we have to live with it.
Yeah. And like, how much of this land is like, has been developed and, let's say, settled by Westerners? Like,
Oh, tons. I mean, that's what makes it such the implications of the decision so enormous, because this is the first time that Aboriginal title has been given over a highly developed urban area owned by many, many private individuals and corporations.
yeah, that's why I'm kind of like wondering what this, like, the precedent this is going to set, because I've always been very critical about these land acknowledgements that we've been hearing, like that have come about like during the Trudeau era. It's just like, it reminds me of that scene. Do you watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
No, I've never seen that. I've heard it's great.
Oh, it's awesome. But like, long story short, the guys, they're all terrible people, but it was the Christmas special. So they flash back to their childhood where they broke into somebody's house, because that was one of the characters, their family tradition. He always thought, until he became an adult, that that's what you do on Christmas, because his parents didn't have any money. So that was their Christmas tradition. You go to your neighbor's house, you break into their house, you take their presents, and then you bring them home. That's why there were no presents under your tree, because somebody already stole them, right? That was normal for him. And then he has this epiphany when he hangs out with his friends when they're adults, like, no, that's not what Christmas is. So they're just like, oh man, like this robot toy from the 90s, I got to give this back. So they show up and they find the kid that they stole it from, and they're standing there at this grown man's house and just being like, so let me get this straight. You stole this from me, and now you're here 35 years later to give it back. And then buddies just look at each other and they're just, give it back? No, we weren't going to give it back. Like, that's to me what the land acknowledgements have been. You know what I mean? Like, I can't put myself in the shoes of like an indigenous person, but like, I don't know. I just think it's very insulting if you're not going to give it back. You know what I mean? What's the point of this?
Yeah, it would just be completely empty virtue signaling for sure. Yeah. But I think what this Cowichan decision shows is that maybe the virtue signaling is less empty and more concerning than maybe we give it credit for. Right? Like, these land claims are everywhere. Another really interesting thing too on that file is, and in particular with regards to town hall they held on it, was the issue of notification. So this has been called in many places the longest trial in Canadian history. The homeowners whose properties were affected by the decision were not told that this was even happening. I just can't even imagine how creepy that would be, to one day just receive a letter from the government saying, you no longer own your home, and we've been discussing how you might not own your home for the last 14 years, and have just decided to tell you about that now. I mean, I think it was 11 years, but in any case, it's
So what happens
weird
to the money? You know what I mean? Like, let's say you own your house, or you're leasing it from the bank. You know what I mean? Let's say you've got 80% of your mortgage is paid. What happens to your equity? in like some sort of
Great
weird.
question. So the city lawyer, his first name is Tom. I can't remember what his last name is, but you know that guy who asked the property tax question. He says, that doesn't sound like you own my home either. And so the mayor turns to the city lawyer. He goes, does anybody own this man's home? Like nobody seems to know. And so another person came up, they asked exactly that question. They said, was it possible we could get paid out? Pretty reasonable question, right? And the city lawyer, this is Tom, says, unfortunately, all of your equities have plummeted already anyway. And you could just hear an audible gasp through the banquet hall.
That's absurd. I don't know, man. All of this just seems to be forced upon us to create division. Because the people, like the Aboriginals who are going to be benefiting from this, like these land grabs, essentially, like they were born years and decades, in some cases centuries after this happened. And so are the people that own the house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All of this is very, like you said, it's performative virtue signaling. And it just seems to me to be very divisive in a country that has the most abundance of real estate in the entire world. You know what I mean? Like we are
true.
the most, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have to be the most like sparsely populated country in the world. Like it's not even
Russia.
close, right?
Russia's got to be up there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, fair. They might have us beat.
I think Mongolia is actually like the most sparsely, like I think almost everybody lives in Ulaanbaatar or whatever, the capital of Mongolia.
But the point is, if the Canadian government really wanted to make this right, there's enough land. There's enough resources for everybody in this country.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
it just seems absurd that they have us fighting with each other over this.
Is like, what do you build houses out of? Trees. It's not like we lack those either. Right, so it's hilarious in a sense, like that we made such a mess out of things. Now I've been talking with Brittany, who, if you're on X, you probably know who she is. She's Brittany. She's a big account on X. It's got like 61,000 followers or something, and she's Indigenous, and her and I have been kind of going back and forth on this, and I think she's pretty royally pissed at the whole thing, for the same reason a lot of people are, which is that it is creating division. So Angus Reid put out a poll, and I think it was 60% or more people said that this is harming reconciliation. I would tend to agree. I mean, I don't see how reconciliation and private property can't coexist.
No, of course not. Well, like I said, like if the Canadian government really wanted to make it right, there's an abundance of resources here to do so.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. And I mean, then there's the other issue too with the Cowichan tribes, where they already have their own. So Cowichan tribes, I want to make this is really interesting as well. That is a colonial concept, the Cowichan tribes. You'll notice that it's plural versus singular. So the Cowichan tribes is actually like, I think 8 or 9 tribes that were amalgamated into one organization. I believe it's the largest Indigenous tribes organization in BC, maybe Canada. And so that's kind of funny. Like, how could they claim that it's their land when they're not even really a singular tribe? I mean, it's an amalgamation of tribes, many of them speaking different languages, having different customs, so on and so forth.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I'd like I said, I'm kind of ignorant on the dynamics of like the West Coast Aboriginal tribes, so I'll have to take your word on that one. But yeah, that's really interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, there's a bunch of these where it'll be 8 or 9 different First Nations all amalgamated into one organization. So the Cowichan tribes, I believe, is the biggest.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, I think I'm probably going to land the plane on that, dude.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for coming on, man. And do you want to just remind everybody where they can follow you?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm on X. You can find me. I'm Alex Zoltan, AlexZoltan. You can also find my work through True North. I work for True North Wire as a crime reporter. You can also find much of my material on Juno News. And yeah, please, it is coming up to Christmas, and True North is a registered nonprofit. So if anybody is feeling generous and they would, and more importantly, that they have the means to do so, we'd really appreciate people making I believe it's a tax deductible charity contribution towards True North to promote independent journalism. We don't receive any media subsidies from the government at all. So anybody who can do that would much appreciate it, especially.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's very important because True North is not they're not a legacy media organization. They hire honest journalists such as Alex. I think they really do their best to be unbiased, unlike the behemoths of CBC, CTV, and Global. So yeah, if you have the means to make a contribution to True North, I think it would help out a lot. So yeah, Alex, man, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And thanks for watching, everybody. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Johnny from Nova Scotia says thank you. Hey, Johnny from Nouvelle-Écosse, il dit merci, thank you.
Thanks to you.
Thank you so much.
We're from Quebec.
Yeah, Quebec.